I got a question by Menachem. Menachem is asking actually a few questions. The first question he's asking if after I described in my video the feeling of floating and slowly ascending and going higher and higher, that the feeling was like pleasure and relaxation. He was asking if I perceived it or if I felt that this is Gan Eden, heaven. And another question is that he's asking that he says that he always thought that Gan Eden, that heaven, is a place where you kind of reunite with all the people you love. And also, why do I think that I first saw that before entering the black thing that I say in the video? So I'm going to try to answer everything, all these questions in one shot. So first of all, the feeling that I felt of ascending and the relaxation and all that, that was nice and relaxing, and I can't really say pleasurable, but it was just very amazing and relaxing, and there was no worries and nothing negative. The pleasure came actually after. If you really follow the video, first came the part that I was like kind of still around in this world, let's call it. Then went the whole part with the black thing. Only after that came the part of more pleasure. Now, all these are not even close to being Gan Eden. This is not even close to being heaven. Gan Eden is heaven. The pleasure that the soul gets in Gan Eden there's no comparison to even what I felt. The beginning, what I felt was it was just pleasurable because there was nothing negative. At the beginning, when the soul leaves the body, in the beginning it stays next to the body, it stays kind of in this world before it ascends and goes higher. So there is some kind of a pleasure in there because it's just relaxing, and there's nothing negative, no pain, no fear, no anxiety, nothing negative. So yes, it is pleasurable. Later, when the soul ascends and goes to a much higher place, then it has to go through different stages. The pleasure that I felt, that was even way before going into Gan Eden. I wasn't even close to Gan Eden. The pleasure that I felt was that some kind of a closeness to God, some kind of a godly revelation that's translated into amazing pleasure. But the pleasure that the soul gets in Gan Eden is like by far anything from what I felt. It says in different sources, in the Talmud, in the Zohar, that the pleasure that the soul gets in Gan Eden, in heaven, is depending on how much it's able to receive of godly revelation. Now let me iterate about that. The godly light, the endless godly light, can only be held by a certain, whatever the soul has a capacity to hold. So imagine, like, to kind of translate it to this world, you can take like a big truck. So the big truck has a certain size that can only hold a certain amount of weight or space. If you take a bigger truck, it can take even more, and so forth. So the same in spiritual. The more the soul has the capacity to hold godly light, that's as much as it can receive, and that godly light will translate to amazing pleasure. The more the soul is active in this world, in good deeds, in mitzvahs, in learning Torah, in doing God's will, it enlarges its capacity to receive that godly light. So in Gan Eden, in heaven, there's many different levels. The more the soul is worthy, I wouldn't say worthy is not actually the right word, but the more the soul works down in this world, studies Torah, does a lot of mitzvahs, does good deeds, then it basically gets a greater capacity to hold godly light, and its position in Gan Eden the soul will get much greater pleasure from godly revelation. So the pleasure that I felt, that was like by far anything to do with Gan Eden. What I felt was like a little taste. Gan Eden is like, there's no even words to describe the pleasure in Gan Eden. It's basically sitting and and understanding godliness, seeing everything. And that gives to the soul tremendous pleasure. Now, as regards to that, in Gan Eden, one sees, relatives and all the people that were close to him. Of course, when the soul goes up to Shamayim, to the heavens, then it sees all his loved ones, family members, parents, children. In Gan Eden, the thing is that the soul is positioned to the point where it's able, up until where it's able to receive the godly light. Almost like kind of try to put it in a different way to understand it. Imagine like you have this huge source of light, let's say the sun. So if a certain entity can hold the heat of the sun and the light of the sun, so it will be much closer to the sun. And at the same time, a different entity cannot hold so much light or cannot sustain so much heat of the sun, so it will be positioned much further back. So kind of the same in Gan Eden. The more the soul is able to be closer to God, then it's in a higher position and it's more closer to God, versus a different soul that will be a little bit positioned more back. So wherever that soul is, if its loved ones are in a much further away level, then one would say they're not together. But since in Ruchnius, in spirituality, there's no time or place, so the soul can be kind of at the same place in different times. In different places. So this is a more deep concept that is hard to explain in a short video. But to kind of answer the question, yes, the soul, once it reaches heaven, it does meet, let's call it, all their loved ones, their family, kids, parents, etc., etc. And the last question, why did I first see this and then only go to the black thing that I'm talking about? Well, the thing is that when the soul leaves the body, then the first stage is it's still hovering around the body. It still has a connection to this world. When a person dies, the first year the soul is still down in this world, kind of still down in this world. It sees everything, it's around everything, it sees, it hears, it feels. It's kind of around, still sticking by in this world. And the soul sees everything and slowly it starts ascending higher and higher. Then it has to go through different stages to be prepared to go and be elevated to higher realms. And then the soul has to go through some kind of a judging process, like a trial, before it's ready to go even higher, etc., etc. And then there's different stages what the soul has to go through. What I saw was just like the beginning around the body. Even though it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like tremendous pleasure. Then, the black thing that I'm talking about in the video is basically the angel of death, Malach HaMavet, who came to take the soul. And whatever is good is basically compared to light, and whatever is bad is compared to darkness. So since the Malach HaMavet and my whole situation wasn't anything good, so all I saw was like the darkness, the black thing. So the stages that I had to go through that black thing, came after that my soul first left the body. First, the soul has to go out of the body, and I was kind of introduced to the situation the first few minutes or moments or whatever in this world was like 2 minutes, but the way it looked to me was like years, since there's no concept of time in spirituality. So first came the stage of leaving the body and seeing everything from above. Only then the angel of death had a grab at me and like pulled me, and that's why it felt like it's like kind of like covering me, because I was completely surrounded by it, and all that it represented was darkness. So everything was like just that pitch black feeling. So first comes that stage, then comes the messenger to deliver the soul wherever it goes, and only then I started slowly being introduced and being exposed to other situations, and the soul goes higher and higher and higher, and every stage it gets introduced to another new thing and another new thing. So I can't really say about every person, but from what I know, first stage, the soul leaves the body. And it sees everything in this world. It's still connected to this world, and it sees everything. Not only sees, it hears everything, it feels everything, it has a complete connection to this world. And it still kind of want to stays in this world, because it still has some kind of a connection. But at the same time, it knows and it feels the benefit that it's going to get if it's going to go back home where it came from. In some situations, if the soul has a lot of merits, if the person was a very good person, then the process of being elevated and taken up is nice and cushioned, and it's said in different sources that, you know, family members, like souls of family members, souls of tzaddikim, they come to like greet that soul and they take them very comfortably up. In different situations when the soul doesn't have so much merits, then you know, the angel of death comes to take him, and that involves with some not nice scenes and situations. That's how I felt. And then it gets delivered to where it has to go to, and the process can be bad and it can be good depending on the person, how he behaves in this world. Obviously, the more the person is connected to godliness in this world, does mitzvahs, studies Torah, does good deeds, and prepares the ground, let's call it, in a much better way, then the takeoff will be much more pleasant. The person is involved in the opposite of God's will and all the things that are against, you know, Hashem, then the process is not going to be so nice, kind of like what I had to go through. That's why it's so important, the way a person behaves in this world, because it's kind of like a life insurance to the journey, how he's going to go up. Because at the end, after a person is being judged, it can be, you know, he can have a lot of good deeds, and he can be judged favorably and end up going to the right place. But the journey getting there can be very bumpy and can be not so nice, and that really depends on how the person behaves in this world. So I have different videos that I'm talking about, you know, the different process of what the soul has to go through. You know, the soul has to go through what's called chibut hakever, kaf hakela. There's different things that the soul has to go through, kind of like a cleansing process before it's able to enter to a much higher realm in spiritual. So, but the bottom line, it's really important how the person conducts his behavior in this world, and that really helps in the whole process of going up. So to kind of sum up those questions is that yes, you do see your loved ones in Gan Eden. The pleasure that I felt is nothing to even to be compared to the pleasure the soul gets in Gan Eden. There's no really words to even describe that type of pleasure. And the reason why I think I first saw what's around me and then entered the black thing is that first the soul leaves the body and it's still connected to the world and it sees everything. Then it has to slowly take off and leave the world. The way it was for me, that it was very dark and very unpleasant, since the way I lived my life and conducted my life was the 100% the opposite of God's will. So obviously the more the person is involved in this world in good deeds and mitzvahs and Torah, then the takeoff will be much pleasant, much nicer. And like I said before, the capacity that the soul will be able to hold godly light will be greater and greater. And this is kind of referring to the whole concept of reward that one gets for his good deeds in this world, the schar. When a person does a lot of good deeds in this world, he gets a reward for that in the world to come. And that reward is the closeness to godliness, is the larger capacity to hold godly light and benefit from that godly light, and that kind of equals tremendous spiritual pleasure. I wish I could have a way to even explain and to evaluate that pleasure, the little pleasure that I felt, which was beyond words, this is nothing compared to Gan Eden. And nothing compared to, there's a higher Gan Eden and a higher level and a higher level. And the more you do in this world, it's like an investment. The more you invest in this world, the greater your reward is in the world to come. So I hope I answered your questions. I know I kind of went around with different things here. But if you have any other questions, please let me know. And if I didn't answer the actual questions, just feel free to ask whatever you want.